During World War II, there was a farming secret so profitable that families who knew it earned more money working less than families who planted corn every year. No annual planting, no annual harvesting, no annual spending on seeds, fertilizer, or fuel. Just trees that produced income decade after decade while corn farmers started over every single spring. Farms built around these trees generated 3 to 10 times more profit per acre than corn. Homesteads planted with these crops fed families during the Depression when row crop farmers went bankrupt. Operations using these methods passed wealth to grandchildren while corn farmers passed debt. The secret wasn't harder work. It wasn't more land. It wasn't better weather. It was understanding that annual crops are a trap designed to keep farmers poor and dependent. And for 80 years, this knowledge has been systematically erased. Not because tree crops stopped working, because they threatened a grain industry worth hundreds of billions of dollars, because you cannot sell seeds every year to farmers who plant once, because you cannot sell fertilizer to trees that feed themselves, because you cannot keep farmers in debt when their crops never need replanting. Today, agricultural colleges don't want you to know these trees exist, because if farmers realized that one planting produces for a century, that trees outproduce corn with a fraction of the work, and that permanent crops build wealth while annual crops build debt, the entire industrial agriculture system would collapse. But the truth can't stay buried forever. In this video, we're uncovering 10 World War II tree crops that out-earn corn and always have. Crops that modern agriculture deliberately made you forget. Crops that still produce more profit per acre with less work than anything you can plant annually. By the end, you'll understand why your great-grandparents planted trees instead of corn, and you'll know exactly why the industry made sure you'd never do the same. Number 1, the American chestnut fortune. Before 1940, the American chestnut was the most important tree in eastern North America. 4 billion trees stretched from Maine to Georgia. They produced more food than corn, wheat, and oats combined. They fed humans, livestock, and wildlife with 0 annual inputs. One mature chestnut tree produced up to 200 pounds of nuts annually, for a century, without planting, without fertilizer, without any work except harvest. Farmers didn't grow chestnuts. They collected wealth that fell from the sky. The nuts were 40% carbohydrate, comparable to bread. They were eaten fresh, dried, ground into flour, and fed to pigs that developed the finest pork in the world. Chestnut-fed ham sold for premium prices in every market. The trees were the foundation of rural American prosperity. Then a blight arrived from Asia in 1904. By 1950, 4 billion trees were dead. The greatest food-producing forest on Earth was gone. Here's what the agricultural industry doesn't want you to know. The blight could have been contained. Resistant trees existed. Breeding programs were producing immune varieties by the 1930s. But the grain industry saw opportunity in disaster. With chestnuts gone, farmers needed something to plant. Corn seed companies stepped in. Fertilizer companies stepped in. Equipment manufacturers stepped in. An entire industry rose from the ashes of the chestnut forest. Restoring chestnuts would have taken decades, but produced permanent food security. Corn produced immediate sales of seeds, chemicals, and machinery. The industry chose profit over restoration. Today, blight-resistant American chestnuts exist. They produce the same yields as their ancestors. They grow in the same regions that once supported billions of trees. And almost no one plants them because the corn industry controls what agricultural schools teach. The math hasn't changed. 1 acre of chestnuts produces 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of food annually. 1 acre of corn produces similar weight, but requires annual seeds, fertilizer, fuel, and labor. Chestnuts profit more because chestnuts cost almost nothing to produce. The corn industry needed the chestnut forgotten. They succeeded for 80 years. The trees are still waiting. Number 2, the hazelnut gold mine. During World War II, European farmers survived on hazelnuts when grain supplies collapsed. The trees produced food through bombing campaigns, occupation, and total agricultural disruption. While fields burned, orchards kept producing. Hazelnuts yield 2,000 to 3,000 pounds per acre at maturity. The nuts store for years without refrigeration. They contain 60% fat, 15% protein, and enough calories to sustain life indefinitely. They require no annual inputs once established. 1 acre of hazelnuts generates $3,000 to $6,000 annually at current prices. 1 acre of corn generates $500 to $800 in a good year. The hazelnut produces 5 to 10 times more income with a fraction of the labor. But here's what makes hazelnuts truly superior. They produce on marginal land that can't grow corn. Slopes too steep for tractors. Soil too poor for grain. Climates too harsh for annual crops. Land that sits worthless under the corn model becomes profitable under hazelnuts. European farmers understood this for centuries. American soldiers who served in Italy and France saw hazelnut orchards that had produced continuously since medieval times. The same families had harvested the same trees for 20 generations. Wealth accumulated instead of depleting. Those soldiers came home to the Corn Belt. They tried to get loans to plant hazelnuts. Banks refused. Agricultural agents discouraged them. The system was designed for corn, and corn was what they'd plant. Today, 99% of American hazelnuts come from one valley in Oregon. The rest of the country imports nuts that could be grown locally. Millions of acres that could produce hazelnuts produce corn instead because the industry controls the narrative. The trees still grow, the profits still exceed corn. The knowledge remains buried because someone profits from annual planting. Number 3, the walnut legacy system. Black walnut trees produce 2 crops simultaneously, nuts that sell for premium prices, and timber that becomes more valuable every year the tree stands. World War II aircraft factories used black walnut for propellers. The wood was worth fortunes. Farmers who had planted walnuts decades earlier harvested trees worth more than entire corn farms. One tree could pay more than 1 year of corn production from the same ground. But the tree kept producing nuts while it grew timber. Dual income from the same acre. No annual planting required for either. The math is devastating for the corn industry. A mature black walnut produces 50 to 100 pounds of nuts annually worth $2 to $5 per pound. That's $100 to $500 per tree per year in nut income alone. An acre holds 20 to 40 trees depending on spacing. Annual nut income reaches $2,000 to $20,000 per acre. Meanwhile, the timber grows. A 30-inch diameter black walnut contains approximately 350 board feet of lumber, worth 10 to 15 per board foot. One tree produces $3,500 to $5,000 in timber. An acre of mature walnuts represents $70,000 to $200,000 in standing timber. Corn produces $500 to $800 per acre annually and leaves nothing behind. Walnuts produce thousands annually and accumulate hundreds of thousands in timber value over time. The comparison isn't close. It isn't in the same category. Tree crops build wealth. Corn extracts labor. After the war, the timber industry wanted walnut lumber but didn't want farmers growing their own. The grain industry wanted corn acres, not tree acres. Together, they ensured that agricultural education ignored the most profitable crop a farmer could plant. The trees still grow, the nuts still sell, the timber still accumulates value, and farmers still plant corn because that's what the industry taught them. Number 4, the Pecan Empire. Pecan trees produce for 300 years. A tree planted before the American Revolution could still be producing today. A tree planted during World War II will produce until the year 2250. This is what the annual crop industry fears most: permanence. One mature pecan tree produces 50 to 100 pounds of nuts annually. Premium varieties command $3 to $8 per pound retail. One tree generates $150 to $800 per year for 3 centuries from one planting. During the Second World War, Southern families with pecan groves survived the Depression and war years, while cotton and corn farmers lost everything. The trees didn't care about market prices or weather disasters. They produced regardless. Wealth accumulated while neighbors went bankrupt. But pecans do something that corn cannot. They improve the land while producing. Pecan leaves fall and decompose, building soil organic matter. Deep taproots mine minerals from subsoil and deposit them on the surface. Nitrogen-fixing bacteria associate with pecan roots, adding fertility without fertilizer. The soil under pecan groves gets richer every year. Corn does the opposite. It extracts fertility. It depletes organic matter. It requires increasing inputs to maintain yields. The soil gets poorer every year until it can't produce without massive chemical intervention. The agricultural chemical industry needs depleting crops. Permanent crops that build soil threaten fertilizer sales, pesticide sales, and the entire input model. Pecans had to be marginalized. Today, pecans remain a southern specialty crop. Northern farmers are told they can't grow them despite cold, hardy varieties that survive Minnesota winters. The industry restricts knowledge to protect corn acres. The trees don't care about industry preferences. They grow where they're planted. They produce for centuries. And they out-earn corn every single year while building the soil that corn destroys. Number 5, the Mulberry secret. During World War II, livestock farmers faced a crisis. Grain was being shipped overseas. Hay was expensive and scarce. Animals needed feeding and nothing was available. Farmers who remembered old knowledge turned to mulberry trees. Mulberry leaves contain 20% protein. They grow in quantities that seem impossible. A single mature mulberry produces enough leaves to feed multiple animals throughout the growing season. The trees require nothing except rain. Chinese farmers have fed silkworms on mulberry for 5,000 years. But the leaves feed any livestock. Pigs eat them. Goats devour them. Chickens fight over them. Cattle gain weight on mulberry leaves faster than on corn. 1 acre of mulberry trees produces more animal feed than 1 acre of corn, without planting, without harvesting, without any annual expense, just cut branches and feed. But mulberry does something that corn cannot. It produces multiple crops. The trees yield fruit before the leaves are harvested. Mulberries can be eaten fresh, dried, or fermented into wine. One tree provides fruit for humans and leaves for animals. Dual purpose from the same plant. World War II, farmers rediscovered what Asian farmers had known for millennia. The most efficient animal feed grows on trees. The Western feed industry had obscured this knowledge to sell grain. After the war, the feed industry needed mulberry forgotten. They promoted corn and soybeans. They built processing plants for grain-based feed. They made tree fodder seem primitive and unscientific. The trees still produce 20% protein leaves. The livestock still prefer them to grain. The knowledge remains buried because the feed industry makes nothing when farmers grow their own. Number 6, the Honeylocust revolution. Honeylocust trees produce pods containing up to 30% sugar. The pods sustained Native American populations for thousands of years before Europeans arrived. During World War II, farmers rediscovered them as livestock feed that grows on trees. One mature honey locust produces 200 to 400 pounds of pods annually. Cattle, pigs, and goats eat them eagerly. The high sugar content produces rapid weight gain comparable to corn feeding. But honey locust does something that corn cannot. It fixes nitrogen. Honey locust is a legume. Its roots host bacteria that capture nitrogen from air and deposit it in soil. The tree fertilizes itself while feeding livestock. It improves the ground it grows in while producing food. Corn depletes nitrogen. Every acre of corn removes fertility that must be replaced with purchased fertilizer. The nitrogen cycle goes in one direction, out of your wallet. Honey locust reverses the flow. Nitrogen accumulates. Soil improves. Fertility builds. And the tree produces feed that would cost thousands to purchase as grain. World War II. Farmers in marginal areas survived on honey locust when other feed wasn't available. The trees grew on land too poor for corn. They produced on hillsides where tractors couldn't go. They fed livestock that would otherwise have been sold for slaughter. The fertilizer industry needed honey locust forgotten. Nitrogen-fixing trees threatened nitrogen sales. Self-feeding livestock systems threatened feed sales. Every honey locust planted is a customer lost. Today, honey locust is considered an ornamental. Thornless varieties are planted in parking lots for shade. The food-producing potential is ignored because the agricultural industry cannot profit from pods that fall free from trees. Number 7, the oak abundance. Acorns fed more humans throughout history than wheat and corn combined. Every ancient European civilization relied on oak trees as a primary food source. Every Native American nation in eastern forests built their diet around acorns. The most successful human populations ate tree crops. During World War II, occupied populations in Europe returned to acorns when grain was confiscated. The knowledge of processing and eating acorns remained in rural areas. Families survived on what fell from trees that occupying armies couldn't remove. Oak trees produce 500 to 1,000 pounds of acorns per tree in massed years. The nuts contain 50% carbohydrate and 5% fat. Processed correctly, they become flour, porridge, and bread. They taste like mild chestnuts with hints of cocoa. But most acorns never enter human mouths. They feed pigs instead. Acorn-fed pork is the most valuable meat in the world. Spanish Iberian ham from acorn-fed pigs sells for $100 to $200 per pound. The same pigs, fed corn, produce meat worth $3 per pound. The oak makes the difference. 1 acre of oak trees supporting pigs produces more valuable meat than any other farming system known. The pigs harvest the crop themselves. They fertilize the ground while eating. The farmer does almost nothing except sell premium pork. The corn industry needed oaks eliminated. They promoted confinement, feeding on grain. They built systems that required purchased inputs. They made free food from trees seem impossible for modern farming. Oaks still produce thousands of pounds of food per acre. Pigs still convert acorns to premium pork. The knowledge remains buried because someone profits when farmers buy feed instead of growing it. Number 8, the persimmon potential. American persimmon trees produce fruit so sweet that early colonists called them nature's candy. The trees grow wild across the entire eastern United States. They thrive in poor soil that won't support other crops. They produce for over a century without any care. During World War II, rural families harvested wild persimmons when sugar was rationed. The fruit is 35% sugar by dry weight. It preserved without refrigeration when dried. It provided sweetness when nothing else was available. But persimmons have a value that the modern food industry ignores. 1 acre of selected persimmon varieties produces 10,000 to 20,000 pounds of fruit. The trees bear in 4 to 6 years from seed. They require no spray, no fertilizer, no irrigation in most climates. They produce regardless of what humans do. The fruit processes into pudding, bread, cookies, and wine. It dries into a product that tastes like dates. It ferments into vinegar worth $30 per gallon. Every product commands premium prices because supply remains tiny. Corn farmers see persimmon trees as weeds. They clear them from fence rows. They poison them in pastures. They eliminate one of the most profitable crops on their land because nobody told them what they were destroying. The sugar industry needed persimmons forgotten. Natural sweetness that grows on trees threatens processed sugar sales. Free fruit threatens the entire snack industry. Persimmons had to remain a foraging curiosity instead of a commercial crop. The trees still grow wild everywhere. They still produce enormous yields. They still wait for farmers to recognize what they've been clearing as trash. Number 9, the black locust miracle. Black locust may be the most useful tree that American farmers are taught to hate. It fixes nitrogen at rates exceeding any other temperate tree. It produces wood that lasts 100 years in ground contact without treatment. It grows faster than any hardwood on the continent. During World War II, black locust provided fence posts. When treated, lumber wasn't available. The posts outlasted the farmers who set them. Fences built in 1943 still stand today, 80 years later, without a single replaced post. But black locust does something even more valuable. It creates fertility from air. A black locust grove fixes 100 to 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre annually. That's $100 to $200 in fertilizer value produced for free. The trees literally create the fertility that corn farmers purchase. The nitrogen doesn't stay in the trees. It leaks into surrounding soil through root dieback and leaf fall. Crops planted near black locust grow faster than crops in open fields. The trees fertilize everything around them while producing valuable timber. This is why the agricultural chemical industry needed black locust forgotten. A farm lined with black locust windbreaks reduces fertilizer needs across the entire property. The trees produce fence posts worth hundreds of dollars each. They grow on marginal land that can't support other crops. They turn worthless ground into productive assets. The fertilizer industry cannot sell nitrogen to farmers who grow it. The lumber industry cannot sell fence posts to farmers who harvest their own. Black locust threatens too many income streams to be promoted. Today, agricultural agents teach farmers to eliminate black locust as an invasive weed. The most useful tree in American farming is treated as an enemy because the industry profits when farmers buy what they could grow. Number 10, the complete tree farm system. Here's what World War II farmers understood that modern agriculture has deliberately erased. These trees work together as a system that eliminates the need for annual crops entirely. Chestnuts and oaks provide carbohydrate staples for human food. Hazelnuts and walnuts provide fats and proteins. Persimmons and mulberries provide sugars and fruit. Honeylocust and mulberry provide livestock feed. Black locust provides nitrogen and fence posts. Pecans provide income and timber. A farm designed around these trees requires no annual planting, no annual fertilizer, no annual seed purchases, no annual fuel costs for plowing and planting. The trees produce regardless of what the farmer does. The first years require patience. Trees take time to mature. Income starts slow and builds over decades. This is precisely why the banking system rejects tree crops. Banks profit from annual operating loans. Seed companies profit from annual purchases. Fertilizer companies profit from annual applications. Equipment dealers profit from annual machinery payments. The entire agricultural finance system depends on farmers repeating the same expenses every year. Tree crops end the cycle. One planting produces for a century. Debt becomes unnecessary. The farmer builds wealth instead of paying interest. World War II families who remembered tree crops survived the Depression, while corn farmers lost their land. They passed productive farms to children, while corn farmers passed debt. They built generational wealth, while the annual crop system extracted it. After the war, the agricultural industry needed tree crops forgotten. They promoted corn as modern farming. They made permanent crops seem backward and unscientific. They funded research on annual crops and defunded research on perennials. For 80 years, they've been winning. Farm debt has increased every decade. Family farms have disappeared by the millions. Wealth has concentrated in corporations, while farmers have become tenants on their own land. But the trees haven't changed. Chestnuts still produce 2,000 pounds per acre. Hazelnuts still yield 10 times more profit than corn. Walnuts still accumulate timber value while producing nuts. The system that built agricultural prosperity for thousands of years still works exactly as it always has. These weren't just farming techniques, they were wealth-building strategies developed by civilizations that measured success in centuries, not quarterly reports. No annual debt cycles, no input dependency, no starting over every spring. Just trees that produced generation after generation while farmers collected what fell. And here's what the grain industry doesn't want you to understand. These methods aren't outdated, they're superior. A farm built on tree crops survives droughts that bankrupt corn farmers. A family with producing trees has income when commodity prices collapse. Our great-grandparents could weather any crisis. We can survive only until the next loan payment comes due. Modern agriculture forgot tree crops because forgetting made corporations money. Every permanent planting prevented is a century of seed sales preserved. Every farmer trapped in annual cycles is a permanent customer for inputs. The industry profits from your debt. For 80 years, they've been winning. Corn acreage has expanded into every marginal acre. Tree crops have been cleared for grain. The most profitable farming system in history has been erased for the least profitable system that requires the most purchasing. But knowledge can't be killed forever. Chestnuts still grow. Hazelnuts still profit 10 times more than corn. Walnuts still accumulate wealth. The tree crops that built American prosperity still work exactly as they always have. The next time corn prices crash, two kinds of farmers will exist. Those who planted what the industry told them to plant, and those who planted what actually builds wealth. If this knowledge matters to you, subscribe now. Share this with every farmer still trapped in the annual debt cycle. Because the trees your great-grandparents planted are still the crops that build fortunes. Plant a tree this year. Start the system that banks don't want you to start. I'll see you in the next video.